Hey, lit class. It's January 7th, and today we're going to have two topics. One is the Red Badge of Courage, which hopefully you're well into reading and you're understanding it, you get it, all that. And the other thing we're going to talk about a little bit is poetry, okay? So I talked a little bit about the contrasts in the Red Badge of Courage in the last lecture. You know, I talked about, that we have the courage and the desire to show courage, but to show it only with a wound, but the fear of getting the wound is preventing him from showing the courage. And Henry has this terrible fear that, it's like he's going to be humiliated and people are going to mock him, and they're even going to use his name as, don't pull a Henry kind of thing to talk about someone who's a coward. All right. And so Henry is caught in this, he wants to live and he wants honor, but he's ashamed of the life that he's living because he's pretending, right? And then we get to this place where Henry finally gets a wound. He gets a wound because he's annoying a guy and he hits him in the side of his head with his rifle. So he has a wound now. He did it, but it wasn't in battle. So now it's kind of like this living a lie idea. It's like he has this new wound and, it's a badge of courage. He wants people to think, right? It's a red badge of courage. But to Henry, it's really a red badge of shame, right? It's a disgrace. He did not get this wound in battle. He has not been part of a battle. He hasn't participated. He hasn't risked his life. Okay? We see Henry, he's immature and he's insecure and he's just all tied up with these feelings. And then we meet this new character. This character that's called the cheerful soldier. You notice that Crane doesn't spend a lot of time giving characters names so that we know who we are. We have the tattered soldier, we have now the cheerful soldier, and I think it's a reflection of kind of like what it's like to be a soldier. You encounter a lot of people, but you don't really know them. They're not in relationships. We had a relationship with the Jim, and Jim has died, and so now these other guys, he's not going to have this same kind of relationship. Okay, this cheerful soldier is kind of a bewildering character because he kind of is so different from anything else in the book, and people have debated for a long time, what was Crane doing? Why did he put this character in there? Was it supposed to be some kind of supernatural character? Was it like an angel or something? But because Crane is very much kind of committed to realism, wouldn't make a lot of sense for him to put in a supernatural character, but there are still people who argue for that idea. Another theory is that he's a totally bewildering character. Like, where did he come from? Well, who is this guy? I don't get it. And some people believe that Crane is often showing throughout the book how war is bewildering. War is confusing. War is not like orderly lines and we'll all stand and we'll shoot. It's not like that in the Civil War. It's not like a Napoleonic War back in Europe. It's people running and screaming, and there's smoke, and there's chaos and bullets flying, and it's just not orderly. And so a lot of things you're bewildered, you're confused, you don't really know what's going on. Who do I shoot? I'm looking for the uniform colors, right? Blue and gray. Who's who? Who's mine? Who's theirs? And that's kind of a theme of war, is this idea of being confused and bewildered. And so Crane throws things in there that we don't get. Like, what does that even mean, right? He wants to show us how it's impossible to explain war. It's impossible to explain what it's like to someone who hasn't experienced it. It's confusing and it's bewildering like a battle. So I think that's some of what Crane is trying to communicate with these characters that kind of come and go, and we don't really know them, and we see them for a minute, and so again, it's kind of incomprehensible, which is a result of war. So, which is obviously the Red Badge of Courage. One of the main themes is war and what it's like to be in war. So, keep those things in mind as you read. And we will talk some more about it next time. Maybe in person. Wouldn't that be awesome? Don't know, but we'll see. Ooh, just dropped on the papers on the floor. Hold on. I'll get them. Got them. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk about our other subject. We did this one, check. We're good on that one. Now we're going to talk about poetry. And there's important things that I want you to know about poetry. When you look at a poem, or you write a poem, poems are made up of 4 things generally. Okay, it has so many lines, and you're going to watch a video about this structure of poetry. So a poem, an E.E. Cummings poem, we'll talk about E.E. Cummings next week, may only have 1 line. Or it may just have a list of words. He doesn't have lines because he writes very eccentric free verse. All right. Most poetry has stanzas. A stanza is like a paragraph in a poem, a group of lines that work together. Okay. Most poems have rhythm and rhyme to them. Not every poem has that though. Okay. Free verse doesn't have that. All right. An acrostic poem that you write may not have that. What is an acrostic poem, you might ask? An acrostic poem is a poem that looks like this. It takes a word, it goes vertically, and then each of these will become the line in the poem. Okay? So, war. War is wild. War is, I don't know, I should have thought about this beforehand, huh? War is action. And war is red wounds. I can add to this. Wild action. Oh, I said action. Wild fear. Action and chaos. Red wounds. So there's my war acrostic poem. Okay, that's one form of poetry. It doesn't have stanzas, okay? Doesn't really have much in the way of rhyme or rhythm. Neither does free verse, where you're just writing, kind of stream of consciousness, what comes out of your mind. So I want to talk about some other ones, okay? Blank verse is a poem that's got very precise rhythm, very precise meter, and it's usually iambic pentameter, which is like a heartbeat, right? Dun 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 dun. That's iambic pentameter, and that's usually the way blank verse is written. There's no particular number of lines or how many syllables, it's just written that way. Some poetry is rhymed poetry, where at the end of each line or every other line or every 4th line, there's a rhyme. There's usually a meter, a rhythm pattern to it, or sometimes it'll be a musical form if it's a poem set to music. Okay, an acrostic poem, I just showed you what that is, where a word is written vertically and then the lines start with the letter of the word and the poem is about that word. An epic poem, okay, Homer's Odyssey is an epic poem. It's thousands of pages, at least hundreds and hundreds, almost 900 pages or something. And it's definitely something, it tells a story. It's usually about heroes. It's usually, they're doing extraordinary things, sometimes supernatural things. And, it's like a book. Okay, so don't write an epic this week, all right? I think you should not do that. You can do it on your own time, but don't turn in a book this week in your epic poem, okay? Because you're going to write a poem this week. Surprise! I just gave it away. In your homework, you're going to write me a poem on any subject that has to do with war or the Red Badge of Courage. Okay, that's going to be the assignment. Okay, the next kind of poetry is narrative poetry. Well, to narrate is to tell a story, and that's what narrative poetry does. You may be familiar with the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, that tells the story of Paul Revere getting the message and going out on his ride, and 1 if by land and 2 if by sea, and all of that. That is a narrative poem. There's a very famous poem called The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is another one of these narrative poems. It's telling you the story. Okay, a haiku, I think you all know what a haiku is, Japanese form of poetry. It is 3 syllables, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. Okay, simple. Pastoral poetry is usually poetry about the natural world, about living in the country, about landscapes, those kinds of things. A sonnet, which we're most familiar with Shakespeare's sonnets, right? It's a 14-line poem. The topic of a sonnet is often a love poem, okay? And sonnets have internal rhyme within the lines, okay? But the style of the sonnet is going to set up how the rhyme in it works. And it's often that iambic pentameter that we heard about in the past when we watched the video and from Aquila. And also it's that heartbeat, right? Dun 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 dun. Rap is often the same thing, like Aquila was talking about. Rap is just a form of iambic pentameter, and it's poetry. Whether we prefer it or not, that's what it is, okay? Another kind of poem is called an elegy. An elegy, I'll write that down since it's probably an unusual word for you. An elegy, okay, an elegy is a poem that talks about death or loss of some kind. Those are its themes, you know, and there's mourning and reflection and maybe redemption or consolation. All these things kind of go into a poem that we call an elegy about some kind of loss or death. An ode is similar to an elegy, okay, except it's more like a tribute, okay? It's going to talk about the subject, and the subject need not be dead, okay? You could be giving an ode or a tribute. An ode is like a tribute. That's O-D-E, by the way. It's like a tribute. All right, and there is a poem by John Cates called Ode to a Grecian Urn. So the ode doesn't even have to be, you know, a tribute to something alive in this case. And a limerick, I think you know what a limerick is. I will probably add on to your email a video with some limericks. So, because I can never like remember them and say them off the top of my head, and I didn't write one down. So I'll add some of those to, or at least a few of those to the video that this will be connected with. And finally, lyric poetry is a very broad category, and it has to do with expressing emotions and feelings. It distinguishes itself from epic or dramatic poetry because it really focuses on this is how I feel about this. That's the focus of the poem, and it's called lyrical. All right, lyric poetry. So those are the types of poetry, and there's a homework assignment with the email that this is part of, and a couple of other videos. So maybe I'll see you next week. We'll see. COVID does what COVID does, so we'll just have to see. So don't forget to do your homework and your reading, and that's all I got for now. Bye for now.